The Elves and the Shoemaker, written by the Grimm's brother. Once upon a time, there lived a shoemaker who became very poor. At last, he only had enough leather left to make one more pair of shoes. That evening, he sat sadly at his workbench, drew the shapes for the shoes, and cut them out. "I'll sew these together in the morning," he sighed. "Once they're made and sold, heaven knows what will happen to me." And he shuffled off to bed. Next morning, the shoemaker went back to his workbench and was amazed to see two shoes quite finished on his table. He blinked and rubbed his eyes and pinched himself, but he wasn't dreaming. They were still there. The shoemaker was totally flabbergasted, meaning excited. He reached out nervously and picked up the shoes very carefully. He turned them over in his hands. They were so neatly made that he could hardly see the stitches. They were the most beautiful pair of shoes that he had ever seen. The shoemaker sighed and scratched his head. Then he put the shoes in his window and opened up the shop, feeling totally bewildered? Yeah. He didn't have long to wait before a customer came in. Eager to buy the shoes, the woman paid the shoemaker a very good price. The shoemaker couldn't believe his luck. Now he had the money to buy enough leather for two more pair of shoes. That night, he sat on his workbench, drawing the pattern and cutting them out, ready to sew together in the morning. But when the shoemaker woke up, to his astonishment, there the shoes were already made, and every bit as fine as the pair the day before. There were customers waiting outside his door too, for news had spread about the first beautiful pair of shoes. So the shoemaker quickly sold the two new pairs for a high price and found he had the money to buy enough leather for 4 pairs of shoes. That night, once again, he drew the pattern and cut them out. The next day, once again, there the shoes were, ready made. And so it went on, day after day, until the shoemaker's business had become successful. Once again, he had become a rich man. One evening, the shoemaker said to his wife, "Why don't we stay up tonight and see if we can spot who comes and helps us?" The shoemaker's wife thought it was a great idea. They left a candle burning in the workshop and hid behind a curtain. They peeped out and waited. At midnight. Two teeny tiny men crept into the workshop. They were smaller than the shoemaker's little finger and wore simple, raggedy clothes and caps. They sat down at the shoemaker's workbench, picked up all the leather which was laid out, and began to stitch and sew and hammer. They were so skillful and quick that the shoemaker and his wife couldn't take their eyes off them. The little man didn't stop until all the leather was stitched into beautiful shoes. Then away they ran into the night. The next morning, the shoemaker's wife said, "Those little men have made us rich, and we really must thank them for it. Did you notice how tatty their clothes were? I'll tell you what we should do. I'll sew them new little shirts and coats and vests and trousers, and you make them 2 tiny pairs of shoes." So that is what they did. A few nights later, when everything was ready, they laid their presents out on the workbench and hid behind the curtain. At midnight, the teeny tiny men creeping in as usual, and how happy they were to find their new outfits. They hurried to put them on at once. Then they danced about with a glee. Then the 2 little men skipped away into the night. The shoemaker and his wife never saw them again. But they didn't need them anyway, because from then on, they always seemed to have good luck in all of that they did. The end.